Welcome to Let's Talk Kids. I'm Mary Coogan, President and CEO of Advocates for Children of New Jersey and the host of the video podcast Let's Talk Kids, where we feature conversations between community, programs, experts, and policymakers about issues impacting children and youth. I'm pleased to be joined today by Davetta Ford, who is the state coordinator of the Safe Babies Court Team program, which is presently coordinated by a community program, Child Focus. Welcome, Davetta. I'm so glad you could join me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So to start us off, can you just describe what the Safe Babies Court Team approach is?
Sure. So the Safe Babies Court Team approach is a relationship-based, trauma-informed way of handling cases in the child welfare system that includes babies and toddlers. So instead of, taking the legal and compliance way of doing things, the Safe Babies Court Team approach is more focused on, the baby's brain development, supporting, the families that are involved in the child welfare system, but also the biggest thing, which is that healthy attachment, secure attachment between a child, an infant and toddler, and their caregiver. So that's kind of about, the approach in general. And why we focus on that age group 0 to 3 is, when we talk about brain development, one of the things that we've learned through the science behind this approach is that 80% of a child's brain develops by the age 3. And so that's a lot of learning and bonding and attachment and neurons kind of going crazy in their brains. And they're learning a lot at that time. And so it's such a critical time in a child's life. And that we focus on this time and why it's so important. And what we kind of do is work with the families differently. It doesn't look, the same as a traditional case because this is such a critical time in a child's life. So we put more eyes on the family, more supports on the family, more wraparound services, but while also focusing on the child's brain development and development as a whole. And so we do that by having monthly family team meetings with the families and their supports. We do it by having monthly court hearings where the judge gets to keep eyes on, this baby and this family as a whole on a much more consistent basis. In this case, every 30 days. And that's the way that we kind of always touch base on what's important, whether it's development or the foundation of the parents and what their success looks like.
Okay. So just to clarify a couple terms that I think I'm aware of because of my work, and you clearly are aware of because of your work. When you say the term permanency, what does that mean?
So it's time until a child finds their forever home. So it can mean a few different things. There are a few different permanency options, but the goal behind it is just finding their forever home. So one permanency option can be reunification. And that takes place when the child is reunified with their parents. They're placed back in their parents' care. Another form of permanency is adoption. And that's when the child also finds their forever home. And it might not be with the biological parents, but they go through that process and that's now their forever home. And it's also another process we call KLG, which is kinship legal guardianship. And it's when a child is permanently placed with family member or kin or family friend. And the difference between a adoption and KLG is for adoption, the parents' rights are often terminated. However, for KLG, they are not. So we say forever home because that does dismiss litigation. Oftentimes, we work with families who have cases that are currently in court. And when we reach that time of permanency, we're done with the litigation piece and the court piece.
The permanency is a legal framework, right,
Mm-hmm.
as you're explaining. And it's also, as I understand it, to make sure when you say forever home, so that the child has a stable home that is their family.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yes.
Okay. So the families that are involved, obviously Safe Babies, you mentioned it's very young children, infants. But then who typically are the parents who are involved in these cases?
Most of our parents that we work with in Safe Babies have experienced issues of substance use disorder. That's been a big piece of the moms and dads that we work with. But there are also other things like homelessness, mental health has been a big one as well. But I would say that those are the top 3.
That's preventing them from taking care of their infant, right? I mean,
Yes.
okay. So somebody is making a decision or making the determination that if I'm one of these parents, I'm really not able to take care of my baby. Who is making that decision?
So DCPMP, the Department of Children and Families, they launch an investigation. Most of the time, they'll receive a referral about a child being at risk. There are some safety issues there, and they'll do an investigation. And after that investigation, they'll determine whether or not it's safe for the child to stay in the home. Um, and that's kind of when we come in, when they determine, the home is not a safe place for the child, and so we'll remove. And they do it. They do their legal process with that, meaning they'll go to the courts and they'll ask for custody of the child, and that's kind of when the process begins. But yeah, the division does an investigation and they determine whether or not a child can stay. So for some of our parents who have substance use disorder, most of the time I would definitely say that it's not a one and done thing. DCPMP has been great at kind of going in, trying to help out as far as give resources and, referrals to treatment programs. And it's usually when, something has occurred, whether it's urine screens that have been positive or, the child is just not safe because of, mom or dad's situation while they're under the influence. The division does give a lot of support before removal is done. So I would say a removal is like the last resort. That often is what happens.
When the Division of Child Protection and Permanency now has come in, right, and put the child into a home, I think you referred to that's a resource parent. So for those who aren't familiar with the resource parent, in other states we call it a foster parent,
Foster
right?
parents, yep.
So the child now is living not with their parents, but maybe with a relative or an unrelated resource parent.
Yes.
And then you said, well, then when you come in, so where does the Safe Babies approach start?
We receive a referral from the courts as well as DCPMP. Our eligibility requires a child to be between the ages of 0 and 3, but also have been removed from their parents' care and be in the jurisdiction that we currently work in. Right now, we're in 3 counties, Hudson County, Passaic County, and Essex County. So we'll get an alert, it's like a ding. Hey, we have a removal coming up. This is when the removal hearing is going to take place if you can join. And so typically one of the community coordinators specifically designated to that county would show up to the court hearing. Now, if the judge upholds the removal and say, yes, I think it is best that the division gains custody of the child, we then get the opportunity to speak with the parents for about 1 to 2 minutes. We don't talk a lot about the program at that moment because, as you can imagine, it's a very tough moment to experience. Like, this is a time where, my child has been removed and it's confirmed by a judge this is happening. And so I think the biggest part about that moment is that's our first contact, that's our first impression. And so our community coordinators in that moment always show empathy, but we're really there to get the parents' contact info so we can meet them at a later time when emotions aren't so high, stress levels aren't so high, and we can talk more about the program and what the benefits are. So that's when the court team approach kind of starts in the courtroom after a removal hearing. We'll set up a time to meet with the parents afterwards, and we'll talk about the program in detail, what the benefits are, what we help with, answer any questions that they may have. And at that moment, the parents can decide, whether or not they would like to participate, because the Safe Babies Court Team program is a voluntary program. So parents have to sign consent to participate. And once they sign consent is when the work begins. So that's kind of how we get involved right in the beginning.
So 2 questions I have. One, how do you find it difficult to have a parent trust the program or the approach? And I'm also thinking in these cases, parents are assigned an attorney. So do you find it sometimes difficult to get the attorney to trust the approach?
I'll start with the attorneys first, because we do, at the time of the removal hearing, their attorneys are there, and typically we're put in like a breakout room with the parents and their attorney to talk about it. Now, the relationships that we've created with the parental attorneys within the counties that we work with have been strong. The parental attorneys have really been champions of the program, and they support the program because of the extra support, in addition to DCP&P, that we get the parents and helping them navigate, more one-on-one kind of support throughout this process. So it hasn't been difficult with the attorneys. Because they're a big supporter of the program. There are times when, the prosecutor's office are involved and the attorneys would rather not have their clients participate in the program because, if something is said that doesn't need to be said, prosecutor's office is involved, it can hurt their client. So and I wouldn't even say that that's a challenge. We understand it. Mm-hmm. And so that's for the attorney. So I would say for the most part, it's great. They support the program. We're okay in that area. And I would say for the parents, when it comes, to any challenges that we face when speaking to them or, getting them to believe in the program, sometimes I would say it's about 50-50 because the reality is we get 2 minutes and that's our first time meeting them. And we're just like, hey, this is what we do. If you can give me a number, I can give you more detail. And that's why the empathy piece is so important because we don't know what the parents have went through and what they've gone through and what communications they've had with people and how they've been made to feel. We don't know, especially if police officers are involved. Sometimes, things just happen. And so in showing that empathy, we try to help gain that trust, even though we have a small window of time. If we can get the parents to meet with us at a later time or even talk to us after, we're pretty much good because now it's like, okay, so the parents are willing to listen and see what we have to offer, see what kind of support we have. It can be challenging sometimes because, parents are frustrated with this entire process from the removal of their child and they look at you as just like another person that's keeping eyes on them and tabs on them and telling them that they're a bad parent and removing the child. And so sometimes we get some pushback with that or we'll get parents who, will go missing and not meet up with us or not call us back. So I would say it's really just hit or miss sometimes. It can be challenging. For the most part, it's been okay. We've been able to get, consent and meet with the parents and gain their trust in such a short amount of time, especially when we say that we're a neutral party. Like we're not affiliated with, DCP&P. We're not affiliated with, any other programs. We're a neutral party specifically designed, to support you and your baby and your foundation. And so typically we get good feedback after that.
Well, I would think that is critical. And actually, maybe you're not so neutral if you're there really and you're able to say to them, we're here to support you, mom, you, dad, and your child, right? The healthy development. So talk a little bit about what the resources are that you try to connect the parents with. I mean, you mentioned substance abuse program, but what are the other things that parents might need?
Any type of mental health support, mental health treatment. We also would link parents to different food pantries in their area, places where they can go to get support if ever they hit a low in their lives, because it all happens. It happens to all of us. So substance use treatment, Mommy and Me programs, we have built relationships with those programs to kind of help secure beds where we can probably try to expedite the process. Food pantries. We also help fill out applications for insurance, whether that's through Medicaid or whatever they need, but also just anywhere in their area where they can use support. So women's meetings, not necessarily an inpatient substance use treatment program, but women's meetings, NA meetings to connect them within their community so that they have support from other outlets. So really any service that a parent needs, we'll connect them. And that doesn't stop at any DV services for the parents, any services that just help with like maternal health, all the things. I think the list goes on. Whatever the needs are, we'll find it. So I think I always say this, and this is a big thing to me. We might not be the experts in all the things, but we will for certain find out who the experts are. And that's the community part and being a community coordinator.
Are a lot of these parents alone, meaning they don't necessarily have family supports or friends in the community? And maybe when you're talking about finding them supports or finding them a woman's group or maybe a church group or something, it's because they don't have those supports?
Yeah, for the most part, a lot of our parents are alone. I've noticed a big percentage of our parents come from different counties. Um, and they'll end up in Passaic County because of the Mommy and Me program, like, Eva's Village. And so they're from more south of Jersey and they're up here and they're alone. Um, Usually a lot of single parents that we work with. Um, Family is just not as, supportive as they would like. So I would say for the most part, yeah, parents are really alone. And even if, because there are parents who have support systems, there are parents who have family members who've agreed to take the kids in and who's also agreed to support the parents while they go through the journey. And those are our best cases. However, sometimes parents still feel alone, even in a room full of family, because everyone is an individual and not everyone goes through the same thing. So while you have family, behind you that are there and they have the kids, can they identify with the trauma that you've experienced? Can they identify with, your addiction at the time or any mental health issues that you have? So I think it's a hit or miss.
So some families, it might be a little bit accusatory because maybe they didn't have the same problems as the parent, or maybe they tried to help the parent in the past and they were unsuccessful, right? So they're sort of,
Yeah,
they're done.
that's definitely been a thing. We've seen that a lot where it's like, not this time. Because like I said, usually when the child is removed, that's like the last straw. Everyone has kind of been pouring into at that point. And so that definitely happens. We have, parents who have family members who are just like, that's it. We've had it. And so we try to help build from that. We also, in one of the services that we'll do, we'll find family therapy because sometimes that also helps the foundation be even stronger. A strong parent is only as strong as their village is. So if we can help with that, then that works.
Could you explain a little bit what a Mommy and Me program is for those who might be listening to this podcast or watching and have really no idea?
So, a Mommy and Me program is a substance use treatment facility where a mom and her child or children can reside in that program, but also receive treatment for their substance use disorder.
And I'm sure there's therapy and other supports built into that.
Absolutely. The Mommy and Me programs oftentimes have wraparound services. So that's, individual counseling. They'll, if they don't have parenting classes inside of the facility, they'll contract with a third party and have them come in, or whether it's do virtual trainings. But they kind of, it's a wraparound kind of program where they help mom with the substance use treatment, but also the parenting aspect of it. So they teach not only in the parenting classes, but just in the daily living, whether it's like cleaning your room or taking care of the baby, giving baths, while you also learn to do what you need to do for your treatment.
Is there such a thing as a Daddy and Me program?
No,
How come?
unfortunately, that's a great question. I would say not a lot of dads are oftentimes the one that's being reunified with the child. Because as of late, we've seen a surge of dads who have been, the sole caretaker and provider and who have, come to court. And even though they're the non-offending parent, would jump in and say, no, I'm willing to do the things and I'm willing to be the one to take my child back home with me. It would be helpful, but we currently don't have that in New Jersey.
I wouldn't think there's a lot of these programs to begin with, right? I mean, because you're providing residential care, people are living there for, like, how long would someone live there?
It really depends on the program and the complexity of, the addiction. So it would, it really depends. I would say for the most part, what we've been experiencing is typically anywhere from 6 to 8 months, some programs longer, but in the end, they'll try to help with a transition. So once you're done with the program, the Mommy and Me program, they'll actually support you in transitioning to whether it's a transitional house, whether it's a shelter while you wait and get a voucher. They kind of set that up for you. So there aren't a lot, but there are for you, and the quality of the programs are great because they help with the next steps. It's not like, okay, so you move in, you have shelter for now. We're going to help you with treatment, and we're going to help you be a better mom, and then you're on your own. That's never been the case, and that's one of the reasons why I really love the Mommy and Me programs, especially within our county, because they help with what the transition looks like afterwards, and that's been proven to be really helpful. Most of the moms that enter a Mommy and Me program often have issues with housing in the first place. So to be able to, go through the treatment that you need to get better and to be a stronger parent, you can also do that while having your child there and doing it simultaneously, learning how to be a good parent or a better parent, I would say. I wouldn't even say good parent. I would say a better parent, and get the treatment that you need. It's been great for our moms.
Are many of these moms low income?
Yes.
So, because you mentioned something about many of them have had a housing issue already.
Yeah.
So some of them have struggled just in terms of just job security or income or supporting themselves,
Yep.
right? Okay.
Absolutely. Most of our parents, and when I say housing issues, it could be from complete homelessness or, something happened, some charges, or their housing voucher is being taken away, or they were staying with the spouse and, something happened and now they have to separate and they can't afford the rent on their own. There's a bunch of things that could have occurred, but for the most part, most of our parents are low income, if not all.
To me, it seems like you're describing something that can be overwhelming, right? A parent who's got a substance abuse problem, a mental health issue, a newborn, or a very young child, the division comes in and says, we're going to take custody of your child, and their whole life just falls apart, right? And then someone from your program comes in and says, we're going to help you. It just seems like that could be really overwhelming. So can you talk about any success that the program has had or how it works out? Is this something that your program has found been able to make a difference for some of these parents?
Absolutely. Overwhelming is the perfect word. And it definitely has been for our parents. Like you said, they're juggling a lot. And there has been a lot of success. Like we've seen a great amount of reunifications. And for me, that's always a success. Even though we're a permanency program, it's always great for us to be able to mend whatever was broken within the family, if we can. Watching a family even after a case closes and we've closed the case and, the reunification occurred. And now, the family came up against some type of crisis. And then they even reach out and say, like, I just want to thank you for, this is what happened. I didn't mail in my paperwork in time, so they were threatening to cut me off of this service. But I remember you linked me to this person who kind of helped with that connection. So we're good. And I just want to say thank you. We get so many of our parents who, just come back just to say thank you. Because a big part of the work that we do is not just about helping them complete the services that are court ordered. It's more about like wrapping supports around this family as a whole so that they know when something happens and you're feeling down, you know exactly where you can go and who you can reach out to. There have been times where, and it all depends on what success looks like, right? There was a case that we worked on for Safe Babies. Child was, removed from her parents. We did a successful reunification. Mom was able to, locate housing, get a job, put the baby in school, and everything was going great. Maybe a year or two later, mom relapsed. And the first person she called was us. This is what's happening. I did, and I need help, and I need to go to treatment. I don't have anybody to take the baby, but this is where I am. And you guys have supported me through this journey, so I would love for that support again. And that's exactly what we did. With the help of the division, being able to, support what that looks like when the child does move into a resource home, be able to help mom with whatever she needs. So I guess it all depends on how you measure success. But we've had some great success stories from parents thanking us to parents being honored at our gala that we have for a Child Focus, being honored for the great work that they've done. So yeah, although it's going to be overwhelming because there's so much, we kind of help you get through that by making like these small measurable goals. And we're not telling parents to do everything all at once. We're breaking it down, goal by goal and time frames that are realistic and that doesn't make the parents feel overwhelming. I can't imagine having like 10 things to do and every, month or every time you touch base with your support team, you're going through all of those things at once. That's a lot. So we're like, you know what? We're going to focus on one thing. We're going to focus on your treatment, right? And we focus on the treatment. If there was DV or something else involved, we'll add it on slowly. but we never try to overwhelm the parents because we understand that this is a lot to begin with.
It is a lot. I mean, you can just tell from what you're describing, but clearly you're very passionate about it. So is it the success stories that keep you going, or what drives your passion to continue this work?
Before I was a state coordinator for the Safe Babies Core team, I was actually the community coordinator who worked directly one-on-one, with the families in Passaic County, which is my hometown. So I'm born and raised Paterson, New Jersey. And so when I got the opportunity to be able to work with families within my community and make a difference, I jumped on it immediately. And so my passion, I grew up in Paterson, but I aged out of foster care at 21 years old. So that's really what sparked my passion. And just watching, my mom go through the struggles and just, kind of wishing that she had more support around her, more arms around her while she went through this. As I got older, I learned more about my mom and the why. And it made me look at this work so much differently. Because the why was more about my mom's trauma as a child and just not knowing what she didn't know. But she experienced a lot growing up. And she, although my mom has been, I think this March is going to be 16 years clean. So go, Mom. Wow. I love you, Mom, if you're watching. Mm-hmm. So my mom has been clean for 16 years. But what I realized is, my mom, and she'll say this to me all the time, I was a broken child in an adult body. I didn't have the supports. I didn't know where to run when I was going through something. And so I turned to substances, and it just kind of turned into a ripple effect. And really what she needed was that support. And so as I got older, I started to understand more of the why and not what I was told, which was, she chose that over you. And so this is what kind of person she is. And that wasn't true. Right? Like, my mom needed the support. She needed the help. And that's kind of what sparked my passion in doing all of this, supporting the parents, but also, the children, because I remember what it was like to be a child in that situation as well. So that's really what sparked the passion. I'm glad I can work in all the different counties, but I know how important community is. And that's a big part of this work, whether we're talking about grassroots organizations and places where you can go to receive a service by people who represent you and who know exactly what you're going through. All those things are really important to me. So navigating this system, whether it's reunification or finding permanency for a child, all those things mean a lot to me because the permanency isn't something I ever found because I aged out at 21. So that's where my spark came from.
Well, I mean, thank you for sharing your story. That takes a lot, but I'm also so impressed with how it's enabled you to really reach out into the community and find those resources and clearly help so many more people because you know the resources. And I mean, if you grew up in Paterson, you started there, you also know where the supports, the real supports exist.
That was a big piece. I would say I was able to know all of the things. Where to go if you need help paying a light bill. Where to go if food's running a little low and, what places to run to when you needed support in any area, really. And, the great part about this is, believe it or not, Passaic County, Essex County, Hudson County, a lot of these service providers and organizations that help families are duplicative in other counties. And so all the places where I did know of just had different names in other counties, but they were always able to connect me with a service in a different county, which is a great thing because I know I was the expert in Passaic County, but now being the state coordinator and covering 3, different counties, I'm able to learn from my original county to figure out what's going on in the other counties. And that's been great and fun because I like to go to the places and just see them and talk to them and hear their success stories. Because I think every organization has success stories of families that they help. Because, that's why we're doing this work.
Let's go back a little bit in terms of, at the beginning, you were talking about how the Safe Babies Court team approach can reduce the amount of time that it takes to get a child into a permanent home. And you talked about the development of children. Like, why is it so important to really shorten the term of uncertainty of where a child's going to grow up or their forever family?
I think the bonding is really the most important part, the bonding and attachment. we focus a lot on that secure attachment for a child. And so once an attachment is broken, like during a removal, you'll see us advocating for more visits so that we can try to keep that bonding and attachment there. So that shorter time that they spend in care with a foster parent is so crucial, because this is a time where their bonding and attachment is all those neurons that's going on in their, little brain. All those things are forming and they're becoming stronger. And so, usually when an attachment is broken, we find a lot of things when it comes to development. And I could go into detail, but what I would say is we usually see a decline in the child's development. Whereas with more healthy and secure bonding and attachment, we don't find a decline. It's kind of progressive. And so we know how important it is for a child to be bonded with their caregiver. And so whether that is the biological parents, or sometimes it's family members, where as long as we're securing that attachment and also the attachment between the foster parents and the biological parents, anything that kind of helps the child with some form of secured attachment. When a child is moved around a lot, we kind of see a decline in development. So I think that's the main reason why we focus a lot on lessening that time that they spend in foster care. We try to make sure that we can create the strong and healthy attachment from the child and their caregiver, because we know how important it is for brain development.
What's your relationship with the caseworker from the division? Because clearly you or your other community outreach colleagues you're separate. You're not part of the court. You're not part of the attorney's office, right? And you're not part of the division either.
It's very collaborative, because I think I mentioned this earlier about the DCP's investigation, and what that looks like. And when they determine, this is actually not a safe space for the child. And so we're going to do a removal while we work with the parents on getting back to where they need to be. And so my community coordinators, a lot of what they do revolves around their partnership with the caseworker, because the caseworker is an essential team member to Safe Babies, and kind of showing us exactly what the roadmap kind of looks like, where we're going, what needs to be done, but also in just helping support the families as well. So, the caseworker would also help support the families and do the referrals, and we're there as well for support. But we partner, I would say, more with any other stakeholder involved in Safe Babies. We partner more with the caseworkers. Whereas when it comes to our family team meetings, we're going over agendas. We're learning about the family. Sometimes that background and history, we get that from our DCPNP caseworkers, because we can find out what happened during the removal, but that doesn't tell the entire story. And the division also always has this trail of what occurred before that, because remember, the removal is sort of the last resort. So what happened before that? If there's any family background history, we learn that from the division. So we kind of collaborate on the same goal. So our relationship is extremely collaborative, with the division, and just supporting, them, and also supporting the families.
Would it be fair to say, from my experience, the caseworker or the division comes up with whatever the case plan is, right? And maybe as a team member, you're saying, okay, well, the parent has to do X, Y, Z, and you can help find the resources to enable the parent to do that. They might have the original referral to the substance abuse treatment, but you might have access to the community provider who might help support the mom's treatment.
Yeah, or they might just have more of a general layout. Like mom needs to do, level 3.5 level of care for substance use treatment, and that's pretty much the highest level. This is what's required. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have to go to one that's chosen by the division. And oftentimes, the division would encourage the parents to kind of advocate for themselves and pick what they think is best for them, as long as it's on that level. So there's been times where the division has, recommended based off of an evaluation, because the division never just throws services on the parents just because. Oftentimes they get evaluations from experts to let them know what a parent needs to do. And so they kind of take that as the blueprint and as the roadmap. And this is when the court order services start. It'll be something like, based on this evaluation, this expert is recommending the parents do X, Y, and Z. right? And so we'll take that, and it's usually something general, like mom needs to do individual therapy. The division isn't saying you're going to go here. It's like we have places where we can recommend, but they always open up the door for like, but we still want you to choose what's best for you as long as you're doing that individual therapy. And that's kind of when Safe Babies comes in, and we'll say, we'll, to the division and the parents during the family team meeting, we'll provide a certain amount of services that do individual therapy and allow the parents, as long as it's okay with, insurance or payment, allow them to choose what's best for them. So, the division is kind of limited in who they give referrals to because they have contracts. And oftentimes, and sometimes the parents don't have to go to the contracted providers. They can go to more grassroots organizations. As long as they're given the service at the level that it's being required, it pretty much helps. So the roadmap is there. They'll create it, and they get that from an expert, and we'll kind of be the ones to say, like, is this okay? Is this location okay? Especially when it comes in substance use treatment, because sometimes we'll refer a parent to go and get treatment in the same stomping grounds where they ran and where they've had, the issues and the substance use. So it can be triggering. And so we don't want that. And so if it means that we're finding Mommy and Me programs all the way in Somerset County, then that's what they're doing. And we always, like we said, collaboration. We'll collaborate with the division to see if this is okay. See if this is something that we can do based off of payment or whatever else is necessary. So really collaborative for the most part.
And I would think that in some cases, because the division is the state that came in and initiated the removal, the parent may trust the neutral person or the person who seems to be more in their corner.
Yeah, that's oftentimes what happens. I guess it's just generations of mistrust within families in this huge organization, DCPMP. And sometimes what happens is we'll have these personality conflicts, not even personality, relationship conflicts between the individual, which is the DCPMP caseworker, and the parent. Because what the parent knows sometimes is you work for DCPMP and that's all they do. They remove kids. And so building attachment and relationships is not just something we work on within, the parents and the baby or the baby and the resource parents, but oftentimes between the parents and the service providers and stakeholders like the division caseworkers. We understand the importance of making sure that they have a great relationship, right? Because a lot of everything that we're doing in general goes through DCPMP. And so oftentimes we're trying to kind of help the parents understand that we get it, for one. And oftentimes the DCPMP caseworkers get it. Like they're like, and sometimes the parents don't want to talk to me, and I understand. But and I love the fact that they would allow us to kind of step in and help mend that relationship. I think that's been one of the most helpful things, is understanding that there's been generations of mistrust. We've had families where there are 3 generations in with DCPMP involvement, and they just don't trust the division. It happens. And I love having a caseworker who's like, no, I get it. I totally get it. But listen, I am me. I don't know what you experience with different caseworkers or different organizations, but I'm here to help. And I'm glad that we're all here together. And so sometimes that's really strong. It creates a strong foundation within the parent support system.
That's wonderful. No, I mean, it sounds like it can really be the team that you want it to be.
It's the team for sure. The family team meetings include the team. We'll have the caseworkers present. We'll have the deputies, the DAGs present, which is the attorney for the division. We'll have the law guardians present, the child's attorneys, as well as the parents' attorneys that are present, in addition to whatever service providers, whatever supports that the parents have. The resource parent as a support, for the parents. And that's been a big deal as well. We become a team because we meet so often. Right? Our family team meetings are held on a monthly basis. We all know what the goal is. The first goal after every removal is reunification. And so that's always the goal that we work on for the first year and sometimes more. And so we share with the parents, this is our goal, and we're here for support. And then we create like these goals for everyone on the team, not just the parents. And I think that's the beauty behind all of this, is the parents don't feel like they're carrying everything alone. The parents would have to find the service providers, and sometimes we'll have an attorney say, I know this place in my town who would probably be a great fit. I'm going to send, you the contact information. So that's one goal that we got from an attorney. And the parents get to see everyone kind of raising their hands and putting in the work to support them. And that's what kind of makes the team stronger, but also just builds trust within that parent. They get to see their team actually going to work, supporting them and celebrating like their small wins, celebrating for sure big wins. But we're a strength-based kind of program where we have strength-based family team meetings. Well, we'll celebrate everything. Like mom or dad might have relapsed, but guess what? The next day they showed up and they didn't miss any appointments. It happens. We're going to celebrate that.
Mm-hmm.
If there's been a time where they weren't going to a service for a couple of weeks, but mom finally decided or dad finally decided to go to the service provider and participate, we're celebrating that. So they get to be excited to come to the family team meetings and share the good news. And it's also motivational and empowering for them. They know that within this team, we set the tone to celebrate wins, small or big. So they know this is empowering. Whatever win I have, no matter how small, I'm bringing it to my team, and I know we're going to get that, applause or pat on the back. So it's been great.
So it sounds like great things are being accomplished for families. Kids are able to go back with their parents. There's a team approach, which has not always historically been what's happened. My experience with these cases, a lot of times there was a lot of litigation and the attorneys arguing about things, right? Instead, you're describing people all sitting in a room in a family team meeting trying to find the right services for parents so kids can go home.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there are times where, things can be just a little litigious because when you're in a room full of attorneys, they're going to be attorneys. And sometimes they go, back and forth. But for the most part, we all understand what the common goal is. And so there's growing pains through like whatever it is we have to go through. But at the end of the day, we are for the most part getting the job done.
Given the strengths of this approach, why isn't it statewide?
That's a great question. So we actually we started off in our 3 pilot counties, which was Passaic County, Essex County, and Hudson County. And we recently, sometime in early February, have been approved to expand to 2 new counties.
Okay.
So now we're actually going to be expanding to Bergen County and Union counties. So we're from 3 to 5 counties. But it's a program you have to request the expansion. It's a process. We're always looking for counties who would like safe babies, within their counties. Right now, we're taking it slow. And I'm excited about the expansion because we're growing. And I foresee in the future we'll probably be statewide. We'll see.
But that is the goal.
That's the goal.
Okay. To
For
be
sure.
statewide.
For sure.
And I'm sure, you have to, just like you're building relationships with the families, you have to build relationships with the community in each county, right?
Absolutely.
So there are attorneys that regularly practice in a county, a judge, DCP&P workers, et cetera. So,
Absolutely.
But that's really wonderful news that it's going to be expanding. So talk a little bit about, I mentioned at the beginning, Child Focus, which is the program or the nonprofit that's the Safe Babies approach comes out of.
Mm-hmm.
What is Child Focus?
So Child Focus is our umbrella organization, right? The Child Focus is the bigger organization that houses these 3 programs. One program is the Safe Babies Court Team program, which is what we're talking about. But Child Focus also houses the CASA program of Passaic and Union counties. In addition to that, there's also another program under the Child Focus umbrella, which is the Open Door Store. And that's a program where, families who have children, in foster care or have had any DCP&P contact can kind of go into the store, all brand new clothes and items and shop and have that experience and gain that sense of normalcy. So there are like brand new clothes in there that we get from all different department stores. And we give the opportunity for a child to come in and shop for themselves at no cost to them. So it's a beautiful store too. You got to come and visit. Sometimes it's beautiful. But we see the parents come in and, they shop with their children and the children get to kind of pick out their own things. So that's really helpful. And the CASA program is just the Court-Appointed Special Advocates program, and they operate out of 2 counties as well, so Passaic County and Union County. So Child Focus is more the bigger, broader organization, nonprofit organization, and that we're kind of all under that umbrella, where we're all in the same building.
Well, the store sounds lovely. So can people donate to the store?
Absolutely. People can donate to the store. We only accept brand new items. The items cannot be worn, just because we believe a child is, they might be in the division's custody or foster care, but they still deserve, normalcy and new things like every other child. So we only take new things for our kids.
And could people learn more about that on the Child Focus website, I guess?
Absolutely. Yep. So the Child Focus website has links to the Open Door store, so you can see how you can get involved. We have volunteers who go into the Open Door store and kind of help sort things. We always accept donations of new items. So there's a link there on the Child Focus website where you can learn more about the Open Door store and how you can help.
That's great. And court-appointed special advocate, for people who have not heard of CASA, what is that?
So CASA is, like you said, the acronym Court-Appointed Special Advocates. And so it's a court program where the CASA program, or the Child Focus umbrella, kind of brings in volunteers from within the community and train them to be advocates for children while they go through the child welfare system. These are volunteers. They learn about the case and what a child needs, and they kind of follow the child through this journey that they go through while they're in the child welfare system. The CASAs are a consistent person that's in their lives, that's there, and I think I've heard this before in the CASA world. I've heard the CASAs are the eyes and ears of the courts, because in addition to kind of being there with the child and just reporting on what's going on with the child, what the child needs, they bring all of that information, that great information, things that sometimes slip through the cracks, and they bring it to the courts, and they'll advocate for the children in courts with recommendations that they've come up with based on the facts. They visit with the children on a monthly basis. They speak to their teachers, doctors, resource parents, bio parents. Honestly, anyone who touches the child, the CASA speaks with and does their own kind of I wouldn't say investigation, but just try to figure out, is this baby okay? What does this child needs? Report that back to the court, make recommendations, and they're always there. Great program.
Would a Safe Babies court team case also have a CASA?
Yes. So the Safe Babies court team, we work with families who have children between the ages of 0, so infants and newborns, up until 3 years old. CASA advocates are on all cases, no matter the age. But there are times where we, will have a CASA and a Safe Babies community coordinator. And that's because the work looks totally different, right? So for Safe Babies court team community coordinator, we're there to support the family as a whole, support the child's development. But also, like we said, I think a big portion of the work in the beginning is to create that strong foundation. But finding out who the experts are in the community so that the parents know where to go. Whereas a CASA follows the child and is there for the child. And obviously, if you're following and you're advocating for a child, you also would have to have an interest in what's going on with the parents. But the CASA gets to do things that Safe Babies community coordinators sometimes can't. So the CASAs, they have an appointment order that allows them to get records from doctor's appointments and speak to different service providers. And although we have an exchange of information form, that appointment letter that CASA gets is extremely helpful. The CASAs come in with a lot of insight on the child. And so, they'll come to our family team meetings, the CASA, with the insight on what's going on with the schools, what's going on with the doctor's appointments, if there are any missing or if there are any concerns. And they bring stuff that sometimes we may not have. Because the reality is, as a community coordinator, we're speaking to all the service providers. We're checking in with the resource parent on how the child is doing in their development. We're speaking to the parents. But it's great to have someone there that's focused solely on the child. They bring forth a wealth of information for the child specifically that sometimes we don't have. So yeah, there'll be times where there is a CASA on the case as well as Safe Babies. And I feel like those are great dynamic duos, especially in the child focused world.
Sounds it. But I'm also thinking the CASA, they just have one family. They might just have a sibling group, right?
Yes.
Where the Safe Babies coordinator could be working with how many families?
Yeah, so the Safe Babies community coordinator would work with, as of right now, a full caseload is anywhere from 10 to 12.
Okay.
And it really depends on the complexity of the case. Whereas a CASA, for the most part, is working with one family. And so they get to put all of that energy and resources into that family. So, yeah, having them on is definitely beautiful and extremely helpful.
when you think about the broader child welfare system, right, which is DCP&P, but then all the entities that interact with it, right? It's the attorneys, the judges, the providers of services. Ideally, what would you like to have seen changed in 10 years based on all the work you've done, but also just, as you said, having aged out of foster care yourself?
I really would like to see that same kind of one-on-one support that like a child gets with the CASA advocate for the parents, whether it's a parent partner or a parent mentor. Because yeah, we're there to support the parents for sure. And we do that, with no doubts. And it's something that we love to do. But, to have a parent partner who's also been through the system and who can relate on that level is a different level of support that I would love to see kind of happen in a couple years. And whether it's a parent partner or, a parent mentor from the division or from the courts, just someone, a parent who's been through the system, successfully did the things that they needed to get their children back in the home and can be there to kind of support and walk the parents through what that looks like. Because, yeah, we're there for support and we'll help with the resources and we'll be neutral. But do we really get to understand what it's like to have your children removed and to do all of these services while trying to maintain a household and trying to maintain a job and trying to maintain your sanity? Like we don't really know how that feels like. So yeah, we empathize all the time, but to be able to have someone who's been through that journey and you can say, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That's great. And so I wish it was something that kind of just is appointed like a CASA, right? Like a court appointed special advocate. The parents get appointed a parent mentor who's been through, the system and who has successfully completed. I would love to see that for sure.
I think that's a growing movement.
Hmm.
I mean, it's not clearly, it is not as prevalent as CASA's or even the Safe Babies Court team, which I understand does operate in other states, that approach, right?
Yeah.
But I do believe certain legal services offices have a social worker, or the public defender's office has parent advocates who are trained and they've had prior experience with the system. But we do this for cases involving kids who actually are removed and placed into a foster home or a resource home. What
Mhm.
about the families that are struggling, who maybe with a little bit more support could solve whatever the problem or the issue is before it gets to the point where the division actually says, I'm going to have to remove your children because the home is no longer safe?
Yeah, for more preventative services, within the community would be great. I know right now we're kind of down on preventative care. We used to have a lot of service providers who would be able to go into the home and kind of provide more support, more in-home support with whatever that looks like. If it's coming for 2 hours in the morning to kind of help with cleaning and things, whatever to support the mom or dad if they're going through anything. So more preventative supports and efforts would be great to see. I think anything that we can kind of put into the family dynamic that can help prevent a removal would be great. Like I would like for us to be able to, be on cases where the removal didn't quite happen yet, but there is an open case, right? There's an open investigation.
Mhm.
So no, the removal didn't happen, but the case is open for care and supervision. And that's when, yeah, they're assigned a DCP&P worker. There are services that need to be implemented, but the removal isn't there yet. And so if, you know, Safe Babies Core team or even CASAs can kind of, whatever the support looks like, can kind of enter into the family's life before the actual removal, I think that'll always, be great, having extra supports and more preventative care in our state.
But we're not there yet.
No,
No.
we're not there. We don't take care and supervision cases right now. That would be nice to see in the future. And CASAs right now, unless ordered by a judge, we're not on care and supervision cases either in our CASA program and Child Focus. We're only on custody cases where the removal has already occurred.
Well, Davetta, this has really been informative. I've learned a lot, even though I do know something about the child welfare system. So I really appreciate you coming in today and talking about the Safe Babies Court Team approach.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure speaking with you. And if there was one thing that I can share, it was just, I'm hoping that the Safe Babies Court Team approach would eventually expand statewide. And so hopefully we'll be coming to a county near you. So that's one of the things that I'm hoping. But one of the things I would like, for everyone to know is just that this work is, it is challenging, but it's also really rewarding when we see the fruits of the parents' labor and their hard work and the work of, the system as a whole and how we all kind of work together towards one common goal, which is to find permanency for that child. So it's just a great thing to do. And I think I'm glad that everyone that works for Safe Babies, this work is a passion for them. So it makes everything go so seamless.
Well, based on what you've said today, you have my vote for statewide expansion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mary. Nice to speak to you.
Thank you so much for watching. Visit the description to find out more information about today's conversation. Be sure to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell if you enjoyed the video and want to be updated when our newest interviews are released.